Hi, everyone. Welcome to Pop Culture Pastors Hour, where we are beginning our first of three complete and utter nerd outs for The Lord of the Rings, of course, in celebration of their re-release in theaters as part of the 25th anniversary of Fellowship of the Ring. I'm MaryAnn McKibben Dana, and I write at the Blue Room.
And I'm Edward Goode, and I write at Mago Scriptura. So welcome to our Here and Back Again journey that we will be doing over these next some period of time, next couple weeks-ish.
Week-ish, right?
Something like that. So, just a quick introduction here. So MaryAnn is here from a hotel room in Pittsburgh.
Right.
Just word of warning, hotel Wi-Fi, you never know. And the setup that she has is interestingly unstable. So if there's a sudden tumble, that's what happens. So
Yes.
I'm down in Lego Corner in our basement of our house. So this is kind of our Lord of the Rings corner. So over here we have the Barad-dûr Lego, here Orthanc, right behind me, Barad-dûr and the Black Gate. You see a little bit of Rivendell here, and then if I switch around over to here, have Bag End, including Bilbo's 111st birthday.
Fantastic.
Does
it include the dragon firework that?
Yeah. So
amazing.
here's the dragon.
Yep.
So
fantastic.
Yeah, it's marvelous.
So
it's marvelous. There's a much longer story that goes along with several of these and how they came into our possession, but we have other things. So
yes, I love it. I love it. Yeah. I have a pillow on the desk of the hotel that I've bent. The laptop is sitting on top of that. I have 2 bottles of water underneath the pillow, and I've got my phone nestled in the crook of the laptop. And we're hoping that this little house of cards stays for the whole episode. And these next few, we wanted to do 3 episodes of Lord of the Rings. We love them so much. And also because there are 3 movies, but we're not going movie by movie. We're doing different things with each of our episodes. And we talked about this yesterday, Ed, but they released the Oscar nominations, and it seems pretty clear we should be talking about Sinners right now rather than Lord of the Rings, movies that came out, 25 years ago. But what can we say? The heart wants what it wants.
Mm-hmm.
And have you seen Sinners?
I have.
Okay, I have not, and I'm willing to. So let's hit that before the Oscars happen. I read that it was the most nominated movie of all time.
It is 16 nominations.
Amazing.
Yeah, even Return of the King wasn't. I think even Return of the King won the most, but it was not nominated for the most. Even at the time.
That's very cool. Yeah, somebody that has a Substack along with us was bracing himself for it to get really not panned, but sort of shut out of a lot of awards stuff. So I'm hoping he feels good that the Academy is recognizing that film, and I'm really excited to see it. I saw my brother sent me a meme yesterday that was not going to make any sense if you haven't seen Get Out, but it's a picture of Bradley Whitford and his character talking to one of I guess it was the Daniel Kaluuya character saying, I would have nominated Sinners for 17 Academy Awards if I could have, which is a reference to that character saying, I would have voted for Barack Obama a 3rd term if I could have. Anyway.
I forgot about that one. That's true.
So we're going to do 3 things in these episodes today. Well, we'll talk about today in a minute. In episodes 2 and 3, and we still are getting those scheduled, one of them is just going to be about themes, the themes in these books/movies, and how we think about the broader kind of narrative and in terms of those themes. And then the 3rd episode, again, not sure which order, will just be fun categories. So favorite villain, hero that gets on our nerves, best change from books to movies, worst change from books to movies, that kind of thing. So
best place for a modern day curse word to show up in the film.
That's right.
It's also one that's in there. So
so that it keep its PG-13 rating. Where would you put a curse word? And that's inspired by Billy Boyd and Dom Monahan's podcast where they talked about that. So But for today, we are doing Will It Preach? This is our second round. We did this during Christmas time with the Christmas holiday films that are out there. And we have a long list of scenes, and some of them are more significant, resonant than others. And Ed has set them up on the wheel, and we're just going to randomly pick some and talk about Will It Preach? How would Excellent. Oh, look at it spinning. It's just ready for us at any moment. Um, how would we preach it? Have we preached it? And maybe as a bonus, are there scriptures that kind of come to mind, or deeper kind of texts, sacred texts that we would bring to bear? But before we kind of get into the wheel, have you preached on the Lord of the Rings? Have you used it in a sermon as an illustration or example or story? I'm fairly certain the answer is yes, but tell me how it's shown up.
um, I don't know if I can remember specific ones. I know I did a series in a previous congregation I served that was basically, I don't know if I called it theology at the movies, real spirituality, something like that. Um, but uh, I know that I did two sermons sort of on the Lord of the Rings in general.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, so I know I did that. It's definitely shown up in a lot of other references. Um, it's I do struggle a bit with it though, because it is, and I struggle with this sometimes with using films, is how how many people actually are familiar with them. Like, it's easy
Mhm.
for me to assume, well, of course, everybody's familiar with Lord of the Rings. Well, not
Yeah.
necessarily. And so that's one of the challenges with it. And so how much do you have to kind of explain the lead up to what the illustration is going to be
Yeah.
versus how kind of ready made is it for something? So
Yeah.
that's the other trick with it. So, but yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
you?
It has to be the juice has to be worth the squeeze, right? To
Mhm.
set up. Um, I have I'm trying to think. I think the two that I've done um, are both in the Two Towers. I think one that I hear a lot of people referencing is the conversation that Frodo has with Gandalf. I wish the ring had never come to me. I wish none of this had happened. And Gandalf says, so do all who live to see such times, but that's not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. And I think that one you don't need a lot of setup for. That I mean, we all can resonate with that feeling of like, these are the times we're living in. I wish that we had other problems and challenges to deal with. And But the two that I've done the most, both in presentations with groups as I lead retreats and things, one is, of course, Sam's speech, which I consider like if you've got the bingo card of all of these scenes that we may talk about, Sam's speech is the free space. I think it kind of preaches itself in some ways because it is about the good worth fighting for. We'll link to that in our show notes, but it's at a really low moment, and just talks about the stories that really matter, and the stories that matter are full of people who had all kinds of chances to give up, but they didn't. They kept going because there's good worth fighting for. But the
Mhm.
other one that I've used is Theoden, the king, as he's getting ready to, uh, fight, make this last stand at Helm's Deep as this huge army comes to descend upon them. And he says, if this is to be our end, I would have them make such an end as to be worthy of remembrance. And there's something really, I think, biblical about the idea of, um, that's Jesus marching toward his death, right? And remove this cup from me, but not your will, but not my will, but your will be done, right? Um, that we that there's a nobility in doing what's right, even if the outcome is not what we would want, which I
Mhm.
think is kind of
Mhm.
related to Sam's speech as well. So those are the two that
Absolutely.
I've probably
Absolutely.
leaned into a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well, should we spin the wheel?
we should, yes. And
Let's do
you
it.
wanna go first, and then or do you want me to go first?
Um, Okay, the joke one that I put in showed up. Was
Excellent.
the first one. Okay. So I put in size matters not as sort of like a joke to bring in Yoda.
Yes.
Um, but just it was kind of around just the idea of the multiple different sizes of characters that you
Mhm.
literally have throughout the story. So I will turn
Yes.
that to you, Marianne.
Oh, okay. Okay. So when I saw that there, I assumed that what you were referring to in the language of Yoda, size matters not, is um, what it immediately brought to mind is the line from Galadriel to Frodo, and I cannot remember the exact quote, but something to the even the smallest person can change the future. Um, and boy, of course that will preach. And this relates to another one that we'll have to respin if it shows up, because at the end of Return of the King, when King Aragorn has been crowned and the four hobbits kind of give him their deference, he says, "You bow to no one." And the entire gathered court bows to these modest, small, short, hairy footed hobbits. And I guess what I would do with that is I would bring in some of Jesus' parables about the mustard seed, the grain of salt, the yeast. You know, these small, unassuming things that have such a huge impact on and his conviction that that's what the reign of God is like. The reign of God
Mm.
is like those little things. The reign of God is like a little hobbit in a big, huge world with this task before him. And um, so that's where my mind instantly went. How about
I would
you?
definitely preach.
Well,
I would so definitely I'll echo all that. The other one I would do is something I often share, especially so in our Presbyterian context, we have a thing called a nominating committee where we getting who bring together our leadership, certain leadership teams, essentially. And I always, when I meet with them, one of the first things I talk about is this is not about. It's about who is willing, and not necessarily uh, who's like the number one draft pick.
oh,
Um,
so great.
and that um, it isn't. We can kind of get into this thing of like, okay, who's got the most connections, or who's the wealthiest, or who's been here the longest, or what have you. But Jesus called the willing,
Hmm.
and what you see really throughout the whole of the Bible is that it's pretty rare that God calls the the one that people think is the best choice. King David, who has other faults, but that's another story. But King David was kind of like the runt of the litter in
Right.
his family. And, Jesus just walks along the seashore and is like, hey, you fishermen, come follow me. Um, and so, yeah, that's the other way I would go with that is,
Hmm.
because in, Lord of the Rings, I mean, you've got, who's going to go for us? And Frodo, this tiny little one's, I'll go.
Yeah.
When all the other powerful dwarves and men and elves and wizards are arguing, and just this little voice of I will go.
Mm.
So yeah.
And the other thing that a story like this calls forth is the idea, like someone who is modest in skill or modest in stature, the way Frodo is, he's got to go about this quest differently than someone who has an army that they're able to muster. And that's very much, connected to the life of Jesus, right? I mean, he resisted the idea of, I am this king on high. He rode into Jerusalem on a donkey and deliberately, I mean, when you have that posture, whether you are literally short or modest and humble in your heart, you just have to do things differently. It's through the power of love and kindness, mercy. That I'm sure we'll talk about some of those themes when we get to the themes in the books and
Yeah.
movies. So
Yeah.
yeah,
All
that's
right.
great.
Let's
Good.
spin it again here. Okay,
All
so here we
right. Let's
go.
see what you got.
All right. All right. Oh, it was like landed almost right exactly in between two, but it decided that the split personalities of Smeagol and Gollum.
Okay, yeah. Explain what
So
those are before, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
for those
So
who
for those who, by the way, spoilers abound here. So if you have
right.
not read the book, seen the movies, like it's all going to be spoiled
Yep.
potentially. So just letting you know. Um, so the character Gollum i- in the books and eventually in the movies, you get the story that he began as essentially a hobbit-like creature named Smeagol, and found the ring. The ring corrupted him, and just all and then you found him in the original kind of Lord of the Rings world, the story of the Hobbit, that was before the Lord of the Rings came out. So in the story, there is this split personality between Smeagol that's still in there, um, and the corrupted Gollum. And physically, the ring has completely corrupted Smeagol. Like he's almost unrecognizable from who he used to be. Uh, but the character of Smeagol, the is in there, and the films do a beautiful job. And shout out to Andy Serkis and of course all the CGI people of the way that they helped portray that. But it was definitely Andy Serkis's performance of change, like the voice and the intonations and all of this. And there's several parts where essentially the two have a conversation with themselves. Um, and it's just incredible the way that that happens, and why Andy Serkis didn't ever get nominated for that is a crime, but that's another story. So uh, where so my wife Amy was the one who put this one in there, and she put kind of in parentheses sin. And where I would go with that would be the thing of what Paul's got in Romans 7 of, I'm not going to quote it exactly, but basically like, you know, there's the good I want to do, but I can't do it. There's what I want to be, but this body of sin continues to lead me down this road. Um, and that is, I would probably go that route of, there is that reality that we are at the same time sinner and saint, and that is a conflict that is always at work within us. And we can never get away from the reality of sin in our lives, and the ways that it corrupts and affects and comes out through us, this nature that's there in us. But at the same time, we also have this other nature. And that's something that I'm definitely not a traditional Calvinist in this respect. That I just preached on this past Sunday, that the very first creation story that we have talks about how God created all of it, and it was so very good.
Mm.
And that's the foundation part of us. And so that's there still, even while sin is there, and those things are at work. And same thing, kind of culturally, combining socially and culturally.
Ooh, I like that.
That yeah, culturally, that there is that in the world. The world isn't completely horrific and awful and terrible, um, but it's also not completely beautiful and perfect and great.
Mhm.
Um, it's both, and so that's probably where I would go with that.
I love that. My mind went also to Romans 7 right away. Same, although I would not have been able to name check the chapter. But yeah, the good I want to do, I don't do, and the bad that I don't want to do, I do.
Mhm.
Um, that battle within ourselves. I think the other piece that I might bring in, depending on kind of what the text was or the situation, is just those little moments where there is congruence between the two sides of that character, the Smeagol Gollum. And a lot of it comes partly when Frodo says his name, a name he has not heard for centuries, I think, if I'm getting the timeline right. He has become Gollum, but Smeagol is still enough in there that just the name, and then also the kind of, he really tries, like um, the mercy that Frodo shows to Smeagol/Gollum, starts to allow Smeagol to emerge. Now, I don't know what to do with the fact that there's no amount of mercy that is shown to him that can outweigh the absolute corruption that the ring has brought on him. In the end, he does not get redeemed as a character. And perhaps we talked last time about kind of preaching against the text. Like, do we believe that the evil in this world is so powerful that it cannot be defeated by mercy and by grace? I sure hope not. Why are we doing what we're doing, Ed, if that's the case, right? But yeah, so that's a little addendum I probably want to dig into, depending on the circumstance. So
yeah, yeah. The other name thing, and as you said that, I also thought of my favorite. Well, it's actually my second favorite of the resurrection stories of, which is when Mary doesn't recognize Jesus, and it's only when he says her name,
yeah,
that then she recognizes him. So yeah,
yeah,
so
good call out.
all right, so we're spinning again here.
All right.
And it landed right on the edge of one, and it chose the times of rest that show up throughout the story.
Ah, so I love that this is named because it is not a particular scene, and it's not something that is really made explicit in the movies. Maybe a little more in the books, that it's like you get a sense of like we're kind of hunkering down here. Um, and that would be, I think, a very natural place to just bring in the rhythms of rest and Sabbath. You mentioned the creation story, and that very last I'm at a conference right now, and we just heard from a rabbi who was talking about sort of what the meaning of the word holy. God, as you said, creates all this and calls it good, and then the Sabbath, God doesn't call good, but calls it holy. And holy means set apart. So the idea that rest is holy, I think, is a lovely kind of thing to overlay onto these times where there's just a little bit of a pause in the narrative, right? Um, Tom Bombadil doesn't show up in the movies, but there is a pause when who's with? I mean, Frodo and Sam. Is it just all four hobbits there, or
All
have
four
the
hub.
other two not? Yeah.
Yeah,
I've only read the book once, and so you're going to have to keep me in check in terms of some of the details of the books. But yeah, there's kind of I can breathe. Same with when they go to Lothlorien, to Rivendell. Although interestingly, I think this would be a fun little detail when they go to Lothlorien, which kind of has this it's the kind of most holy place in Elven land, and Boromir, who's the human that is starting to feel the effect of the ring tempting him, says, "I will find no rest here." And boy, there's a lot you could do with that. I mean, I hadn't even thought, but like, this is what happens when you take Sabbath rest sometimes. Barbara Brown Taylor has called it Sabbath sickness, where you like get into that time of rest and all of the busyness kind of is washed away, all the things that you use to kind of distract yourself from what's deep inside your heart. And sometimes that can be scary stuff because you're like, oh man, I need to face some stuff. So anyway, and, in the books, you have a lot of they're singing and they're eating. I mean, Tolkien loves to really flesh out what happens in those periods of rest. But
Yeah.
but yeah, a very clear pacing yourself, and there's some good quotes out there from theologians and others saying, all the work worth doing takes a long time, so we need to pace ourselves. So
Yeah.
just some thoughts off the dome.
Yeah.
What
Well,
would
and
you
that would kind of pull. If we spin to this one, we'll pull this one out too. We'll just
Yeah.
kick this one out. But talked about the pacing of the books versus the pacing of the movies. So in the books, and I don't remember the exact time frame, but in the books, it is a huge amount of time. It's like 2 years, I think, at least somewhere in that, and they are at places. They're at Rivendell for a long time. They're at Tom Bombadil's, which doesn't even show up in the movies, by the way, for a long time.
Oh.
The way the movie shows it, they're kind of in Rivendell for a couple days, and then they're off. And that's just a reality of what you have to do for a film. That's, of how it goes. But there is some, we talked, I think did this come up in our conversation? I know it was in the thing that we sent back and forth, but like, what's your 700-year plan?
Mhm.
That the work that we do, we want it to be done so fast. It's like
Yeah.
the thing that Musk and others, talk about of, work fast and break things.
Yeah.
And God's work is not that. God's work is a slow work.
Mhm.
Um, I love the title of Eugene Peterson's book on the Book of Ascents, or the Psalms of Ascent. A long obedience in the same direction. Um, that's this work. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
that's
played in
beautiful.
that too. Yep.
Yeah,
All
and it
right.
connects to the smallness, the size matters not, to put it in Yoda's terms, of we have to we are not machines. We
Yep.
do have to pause and rest, and
Yep.
so that is a reminder, even as it's also, something that restores us. It's just a way of keeping ourselves the appropriate size, so.
Absolutely. And speaking of machines, I just spun the wheel, and guess what came up? The timing of the book versus the timing of the movie.
Oh,
So
alright,
we're
excellent.
going to remove that and
Yep.
respin here. So is this mine to take the first one again? I kind of forgot.
Y yes. Yeah,
Okay.
because I had this
And
habit.
yeah, you bow to no one came up, so we're spinning again.
Alright.
Ooh, okay.
What you got?
So this is a scene I don't remember how clearly this is delineated in the book. I don't at all. But in Return of the King, there is a scene that is just the most brutal scene to watch, and this is the scene of Pippin and Denethor. Um,
Yeah.
so again, just some context. Pippin per, it has pledged his loyalty to the, shall we say, demented, insane ruler of or steward of Gondor, the human city. And Denethor's corrupted. The book doesn't have him quite as corrupted as the movie does. The movie definitely, he's just horrid. He's award for bad dad of like ever,
Yeah.
for lots of reasons. But um, little Pippin pledges his loyalty to Gondor and kind of becomes uh, not really the right hand hobbit of Denethor, but kind of this. And so there's this scene where he makes this kind of undying pledge to Denethor, but then this other scene where Denethor has sent his remaining living son on what is a suicide mission, um, and he is eating this dinner, and the sounding of it is just, the sound work is great. I will never look at cherry tomatoes the same way again.
Same.
Um, and Pippin is singing this mournful song. It's just so, the person, I think it was my wife who suggested this one also, and kind of put it in this question of like, how loyal do we stay to things that are broken and evil?
Mm.
Um,
Oh, great question.
and so in this case, it was an evil and a horrible act of what he did in sending his son out.
Mhm.
Um, and Pippin's starting to question the loyalty of that, and that's, so there's one place, again, go to Romans with this. I think it's Romans 6 is the thing of, or no, anyway, whatever, in Romans, the whole thing of basically that can be interpreted that like every institution is of God, that God
Mm.
has ordained these things, and you should have that loyalty to it, which has been used to enforce all kinds of horrors.
Yeah. I mean, Calvin
From
kinda leaned into that a lot, right? With
Yeah,
thinking about our role in secular government. Secular. Yeah,
absolutely,
that's a modern
absolutely,
word, but yeah.
yeah. But it was used by enslavers against their enslaved peoples. of saying this is the law, so this is what your lot is. It's used by Christian nationalism today. It's used by all kinds. It has been used and misused. And so this saying of like, well, if you're out protesting, you're out saying no to this, well, you're going against that God has ordained this government, this ruler, this president, this law. And I don't think that's the case. And that's a place where I would probably, talking about kind of pushing back against the text, I would push back against Paul. I have to keep reminding myself, Paul probably wouldn't have been too thrilled that his letters are considered Holy Scripture along with the Torah and other things like that. And he was working out his theology just like we're still doing today. And so I would probably push back on Paul on that and point to, so, you think it's okay that the Romans would go and slaughter an entire village to punish them for the actions of one person. That's okay. And I think still today, like that's there. And, this gets into the story of Bonhoeffer and, his struggle over not only just resisting the Nazi Party, but actually taking specific direct action and participating in a plot to try to assassinate Hitler. And so, yeah, so that's probably where I'd go with that one.
Yeah, that's great. The two things that kind of came to my mind as you were talking. One is at the conference I'm at, there's been in the air, because we've been talking about love God, love your neighbor as yourself. That's been the through line for the keynotes. And there's been a lot of talk about covenantal language. That's just kind of a word that's been coming up again and again. And I think it's an interesting one to put into this situation because there certainly are times when we pledge ourselves to something or someone, but the covenant language helps us see that as kind of a mutual thing, that we're both, it's not a contract, it's not a binding pledge, it is a relational thing, right? And I think you can argue pretty clearly that Denethor broke that covenant in his action. I mean, not only does he send his son out on the suicide mission, but when Faramir comes back almost dead, Denethor's like, we're both going to burn on the funeral pyre. And so I think he has nullified that covenant. And that's when Pippin's like, I can't do this anymore. And he goes find Gandalf, like, we've got to rescue Faramir. He's going to be burned alive because of Denethor's madness. So the covenant language, I think, is another little piece that I might bring in. But also in terms of preaching against the text, I am not a huge fan of the idea of Jesus' death as this kind of atoning substitutionary sacrifice, like he's the lamb that stood in for us, like we all deserve death, but we're going to kill Jesus. God let Jesus be killed instead. However, I think it does kind of say, what if you hold to that, like what Jesus did is put that kind of idea to rest forever. The idea that we need to sacrifice ourselves, because I think Pippin, he feels a sense of responsibility because Boromir of Gondor saved his life. So he feels like his life is owed to Denethor as a kind of payment. And I think the atonement would say, we don't pay lives for lives anymore. Jesus did that once and we're done now. And I kind of, that may be another place to go with that idea. So
good stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Well, the wheel spins again here.
All right. I think this is our last one for each of us, right?
Depending on what time you've got. Yeah. So,
Yep.
This
we usually
one,
do 3, but we'll just
this one was suggested by my son, and it was about the fleeing of the people of Rohan to Helm's Deep.
I was kind of hoping I would get this one.
Okay. There you go.
So for those who need a refresher or haven't seen it, the Kingdom of Rohan, Edoras, the king there, they come to discover that this army is coming to Rohan, the land of Rohan, and they need to flee or they're going to be slaughtered. Now, there's some people are like, we need to stay and fight. But what the king decides to do is to go to this fortress, Helm's Deep, that has protected them in the past. It's built into a mountain, so it seems pretty impervious to um, armies, but it turns out to be a trap because there's nowhere for them to really flee. And if they are outmatched, as they are, by this Uruk-hai army that's 10,000 strong, um, they can't withstand it. And what it made me think of as I saw that one show up on the list is something that I have shared in sermons before. It was posted in our presbytery office for a long time, and I can't. I would love to know what the meaning was when this was first written up on the whiteboard or the whatever. But it said, "When a system doesn't know what to do, it does what it knows." And the idea behind that is like without kind of growing our capacity and our creativity and our imagination when difficult things happen, we will revert to patterns that don't necessarily serve us. And maybe you could help me think of a scripture that might work here. I'm having trouble thinking of that, but the idea that um, that we're just going to do what we've always done, I think, is probably what I would. And it is only almost divine intervention on the fifth day when Gandalf comes back with some of the Rohirrim, including Eomer, and they kind of come in and this is the way it plays out in the movies, that they're able to be rescued, but they would have been sitting ducks there, but they didn't know what else to do.
Yep.
So
Yep.
so yeah, that's kind of where I would go.
So scripturally, I would probably like the first thing that came to mind for me with that is the conflicts that Jesus had with the Pharisees, the religious
Mm.
the leaders of the day, who they had their tradition, they had their patterns. This is how the law is practiced,
Yeah.
and you, Jesus, going and eating with these sinners or not washing your hands or healing on the Sabbath or whatever, you're violating this. And you're a horrible person for violating this. And you're leading people into sin for violating this. And the whole thing in the Sermon on the Mount that Jesus has you have heard that it was said, but I tell you, that is over and over again throughout that. That, that's just off the cuff where I'd probably go. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
I want to add a little. This is a little bit of a digression, but we've had a rabbi spoke to us this morning, as I said, and he was talking about for Jews, you've got love your neighbor as yourself in Leviticus, and just a few verses later, you've got don't wear mixed fabrics, and it feels very dissonant to us because one of them seems really it could seem kind of stupid or at least trivial. And then you've got this like the greatest commandment for us, love your neighbor. And he said, for Jews, what they believe about that is that there's no area of life where God cannot be present, even something as minor as the fabrics that you wear.
Mm.
That there's no distinction between ethical and ritual commandments in terms of their ability to bring God's presence and awareness into your life. Anyway, I just thought that was a cool little
Mm. Yeah.
digression, thinking about the Pharisees and their
Mhm.
like we can give them such a bad rap because like why do you care about healing someone on the Sabbath? Don't we all agree that that's a good thing to do? Well, there are reasons why they took those laws
Mhm.
seriously. So
Yep.
anyway,
Yep. All right. So is this the last spin, I
I
think?
think so.
Okay. All right. We'll see what. I'm going to skip this one because I think we sort of did this a little bit. This was
Okay.
about the Ent's slow deliberation. And I think we
Ah,
kind of got into that with like
yeah,
God's work. It takes time.
that's
Discernment
right.
takes
That's
time. Yeah.
yep.
So if that's
Okay.
okay. I mean, I love
Yeah,
me
that's
the
good.
Ents,
Yeah. For
but
those who don't know that, it's just there's this Ents are like these tree-like creatures. They're guardians of the trees, and they have this long conversation. There we go. Yep. About yeah, there he is, pulling down. Yeah, whether to go to war or not. Um, so yeah, I'm good skipping that one.
okay. Um, so the one that I got, I don't like it, but it's what we got.
Okay,
Um,
well we can do a bonus. So yeah.
okay. Well, it's the trusting the other side of the Palantir.
Let's talk Palantir.
Okay, so somewhere, yeah, so there is a Palantir actually. If you turn this around, there's actually a Palantir in here. So the Palantir were these seeing stones, essentially, in Middle Earth that allowed people to kind of communicate over long distances. Easiest way to put it. And in the books and in the films, they were used to they show up between Saruman, the wizard who was a good wizard, turned bad, who was in Orthanc right here, and with his Palantir, there's probably a Palantir in there, and communicating with Sauron, the big baddie here in Barad-dûr. And there's a whole thing about when Pippin starts looking into the Palantir, and yeah, it gets all messy. So there's and this maybe ties to another one that's in there, which is listening to Grima Wormtongue. So there's this amazing book by C.S. Lewis called The Screwtape Letters, and that is this fictional dialogue between kind of middle management demons of how to corrupt a faithful person. And so it's an amazing book. I just adore it for the most part. But the scene that I always go to is this part about, because this kind of underling demon wants to like totally go all out, like full court press, like gives this guy every big, huge temptation and, da, 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 da. But the senior management, middle management demon says, no, 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 no. The way you do it is like the slow path that is twisty and gentle, but essentially this path to temptation is this path that eventually you don't really realize that you've been going down it until you're so far down it that it feels impossible to get back up.
That doesn't feel relevant at all to our current situation.
No, it does, doesn't it? No. So I guess that's the place I would probably go with the Palantir, is that probably like we don't get in there how Saruman started getting corrupted by Sauron, but we get sort of like how far it's gone, and it's too late. But that the best evil is the one that's just this slow, like you don't realize it. You don't realize you're sitting in the room with the devil. Usual suspects throughout, shout out there. That you just, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he didn't exist. And so that's probably where I'd go with it, is that there is like, don't even go there. Like just, and I go back to even some of my, much more conservative, theological days of like, my small groups, like this hardcore accountability that our groups would have about like, lust and other stuff like that like we were really like, okay, so yeah, I did this week, or, what, like really getting into it of like this idea of don't even open the door. And as I said that, there's trying to remember where it's at, but there is a scripture of basically do not give the devil an inch, essentially.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly scripture and verse, chapter and verse, but that's where I'd go.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I would be tempted, whether this would be effective or not, but where my mind goes is thinking about, I mean, we'll probably talk about this when we do our categories, because we have a category of worst co-opting of a Lord of the Rings concept. And I think we would both agree that the answer to that is Palantir, the company, that it would call itself Palantir, given the way that, and I think Palantir is at work right now with ICE. I was hearing yesterday they're taking pictures, or they're doing kind of facial recognition of people using Palantir technology. I have not vetted that claim, fact checked it, but I did hear that from someone who is trusted. But check it out. It reminds me of Tim Snyder in his book on tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century, one of his recommendations when you do have this kind of surveillance apparatus, and I'm hearing that that the FBI is trying to kind of infiltrate signal chats where there's a lot of activism going on. Anyway, one of Tim Snyder's things is do things in person. Don't trust technology if you can have a face to face with someone. That is the most secure way to do things. It's also the very humane kind of right sized way to do things. I mean, my comment to Robert about the signal thing is, well, okay, they're going to do that. All the more reason why we need to keep our networks small and in person, person to person, so you know that who's on the other side of the conversation. Anyway, so I would be really tempted to just think about our technology, and I
Mhm.
don't know if there's a way to kind of bring AI into this. I have been wanting. I don't know. Have you talked about AI kind of from a spiritual kind of cultural perspective? I haven't preached on it. I know I have a lot of colleagues and friends who have, but
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
have
I
you
I
hit that
I I
yet?
haven't preached on it. I have done some, like, newsletter articles and
Hmm.
some things around that,
Yeah.
but not actually. I actually do wanna do something even, like, within our presbytery with some
Mm.
folks we've talked had a little couple conversations about,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, because I think the thing, and I don't understand the particularities of the Palantir, but what it feels like in my sense in the movies is that Saruman feels like this is a trustworthy vehicle for communication, but it is something that is corrupting him. And I think sometimes maybe even AI. I mean, AI hallucinates, and so the idea that we're getting the truth. What is even the truth? I think I heard that in scripture somewhere. Um, and so, um, who do we trust? What mechanisms do we trust when we're trying to figure out what's true and what's not, and how do we connect with each other? I think that would be maybe
Mhm.
a way to go as well.
Yeah.
So
By the way, Ephesians 4:26 and 27. Be angry, but do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and do not make room for the devil. So
there we go. There we
there we
go.
go.
I love it.
Yeah.
Good. I feel like that's kind of a bummer. So we want to do one more? We've
Yeah,
got
we
we
need to
got
do
10 minutes.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
All
oof.
right.
I
Give us
think
a good
this
one.
one is a little more, the speech at the end of Fellowship of the Ring. Let's go hunt some orc.
Oh, okay. This was one that my brother Matthew suggested. And so at this point, Mary and Pippin have been taken by the Uruk-hai because they were commanded by Saruman to pick up the halflings because one of them has something important, that is the ring, the one ring, and bring them to Isengard, where Saruman point to the one over your left shoulder there. Um, And the fellowship is broken because Sam and Frodo have gone off in the other direction because Frodo has realized that the ring is corrupting Boromir, who has died. But even Aragorn in the movies, there's a little moment, and talk about what you just said earlier about like don't give the devil an inch. Aragorn he kind of reaches out and then he stops himself, but from taking the ring. But then he's like blesses Frodo to go because he understands himself, I think, to be like, I resisted temptation now, but I don't know that I always can. Anyway, so Frodo and Sam have gotten off this way, and then Merry and Pippin have been kidnapped. So you got just the three left: Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn. And Aragorn says, "The Fellowship." Help me with the wording, but it's something like. The fellowship remains true so long as we remain committed to one another and trying to do what we can. That's a MaryAnn paraphrase. Um, but we do not want to leave Merry and Pippin to their fate, and so let's go hunt some orc. So, um, so what would that? How would you preach that? I think I would kind of. Um, Oh, what was the phrase? I think it's from Methodist theology. It's like, "Do all the good you can for as long as you can." I don't remember the whole thing. I don't know
Mhm.
if you know that kind of phrase. But there's a little bit of, this is not biblical, but it makes me think of don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Like the fellowship's broken, but we still have things we can do. That feels resonant to our experience right
Do
now.
all the good you can by all the means you can, and all the ways you can, and all the places you can, and all the times you can, to all the people you can, as long as ever you can.
Yeah. Which is a little Theoden too, right? If this is to be our end, or or the good worth fighting for, all those kind of speeches. So yeah, I think that and maybe there's some stuff in the Psalms or other, just like when we experience adversity, we may need to change. Our mission may be different, but our values remain the same. Maybe that's what. Anyway, what do you think? How would you address that bit at
I
the end?
would. I would. I don't know. I agree with you. I don't know if there's a good specific scriptural reference or story that ties in with that. But I think there's plenty within more the history of the church, and the fact that the first several hundred years of the church grew in spite of the persecutions that were upon it.
It's great. That's good.
Yeah, and even still today, that the places that the church grows are the places where, frankly, it's the hardest to be a Christian. And persecution, poverty, all those, that in the places where it's comfortable and easy and things are good, yeah, but there isn't growth. There isn't. So there is something to be said for the ways in which, yeah, you're going to keep doing it. And actually, we just had Martin Luther King Day. Civil rights movement was, yeah, this is a long journey. I may not get there with you. But that's out there. So
yeah. Oh, I love that. That's great.
That's a better place to end than Palantir.
Yeah. Well, and it did. I mean, you're right. It's the early church. The echoes are there, but I think a little bit in Acts as well. I mean, there's stories, and you can do chapter and verse better than I can, but like they want to, like Paul, is it Paul and Silas or Paul and Barnabas? They want to go somewhere, but they were prevented by the Holy Spirit, And then I've always loved the little story where they receive a vision, like, come to Macedonia and help us, this plaintive cry. And so there's some of that too. There's a little bit of like, well, plan A didn't work out, so we're going to do plan B instead. And so, yeah, I think that's, but again, the values, it's kind of, this is why it's different than Pippin and Denethor, right? Pippin pledges to an authority, but it's really the values that are driving him. And it's same with the fellowship. The fellowship is broken. The relationships have severed, but the values are still there, and we're going to uphold those.
Yep.
That'd preach.
That'll preach. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
Much
well, this
better
was
way to
fun.
end. Yeah. Yeah.
Any others that you want to just smuggle in here right at the end?
I don't. I mean, the ones that are there. I mean, there's some really good ones, but I think it would take us well past what we've got for time. So,
well, I'm seeing a couple here that I hope maybe will come up as we talk about themes, and maybe even categories. I pulled another category into our list here. We have way more categories than we'll have time for, but I would like us to talk about the best speech in the series, or monologue. Sam's speech to me is the best, so maybe it's second best speech after Sam's. But because one of on this list, I think, would be a good. There's a little monologue that Gandalf gives at some point that I think is a good one. Anyway, all right. Well,
good stuff.
Thank you all for joining us for this fun conversation. And my little crazy hotel room rigged setup here actually held, so that's good. And the hotel Wi-Fi.
Yeah, and I am 6.5 hours away from seeing Fellowship tonight in the theater.
Yay, that's great.
I've even got my Fellowship Hiking Club.
Excellent.
T-shirt ready to go.
I have a Mordor Fun Run T-shirt. One does not simply walk. that maybe I'll wear that this weekend. I don't know that I'm
Awesome.
gonna make it to see any in the theaters, but
Mhm.
for those who are, enjoy. Robert went last week to fellowship with some friends, and there were people in their elf costumes and lots of sniffling when Boromir dies, even though everyone in that theater has probably seen it so many times. I just love how it still hits
Yep,
us. So
absolutely. Gets
that's
us in the
great.
feels. All right.
Yes. Thank you all for
See
joining
ya.
us.
Yeah.
This will be posted on PCPH as well as my own Substack,
Yep.
and we'll see
Mine
you
too.
next time.
All right. See y'all. Bye-bye.
Take care.